Welcome to our Executive Book Club, where we read for you, and you give us an opportunity to show you some of the things that we usually share with our students. And today we're talking about a fairly interesting topic. I think we've talked a lot over the last couple of months around leadership, and just to do something differently. And one of the areas that I read a lot in is marketing. So we thought we'd put together a program on guerrilla marketing in support of some of the programs that we're doing. So, for example, digital marketing and some of our executive education programs. I'm joined by Frick Landman, CEO of Stellenbosch Graduate Institute, one of the directors of Eduvas, and myself, Dr. Rian Steenberg. And we, as always, delighted to have you here with us. Please feel free to ask any questions in the comment section, or if you've got observations. The intention is not for you to just listen, it is also to participate, so to give you a two-way conversation. Sometimes that's a little bit difficult with these types of mediums, but it's there for you. There will also be a recording available afterwards. And so I think let's get into it. Hi, Frick, thanks for joining today.
Hi, Rian, looking forward to this. What interesting, I saw it is the 4th edition, so this has been around for a while, and it's been rethought and rethink, and there's a lot of added value if you're already in the 4th edition.
Yeah, and it's interesting because okay, so firstly, make sure you've got the right book. Okay, so if you get the one on the right, Guerrilla Marketing, Counterinsurgency and Capitalism in Colombia, you're reading the wrong book. Okay, and it's not guerrilla marketing.
Now you tell me.
Yeah, and in putting this presentation together, I figured out that guerrilla has 2 R's and 2 L's. Okay, it's like, who knew? Okay, so. It's 373 pages. The author is Jay Levinson. He was, I think he must have an interesting life, 1933 to 2013. And he practically launched the concept of guerrilla marketing in about 1974, I think, if I remember correctly. And it has become kind of a staple and icon and kind of a mantra and a bit of a Bible in terms of saying we should do our advertising differently. And I think a lot of what we see today as customer relationship marketing actually started as guerrilla marketing. And what we'll show you today is some of the interesting ideas and just a couple of fun executions and creative in terms of the marketing strategy that maybe inspires and somehow in another way guides the process. The new edition has some specific aspects of internet marketing. How do you do podcasting, automated marketing, repeat and referral business, and a little bit about managing work from home and freelance employees, etc. I reckon that if you're a small business and you're starting out, this is definitely one of those books that you would read. There's some others that I would also recommend. I don't think it's kind of definitive and the only one, but in terms of just giving you creative ideas to think about the problem, this is definitely an interesting read. And then there are quite a few books around guerrilla marketing, or guerrilla advertising was the original kind of version 1. And there's the one after this that's on social media. And I think it promises like 1,000 ways to get yourself out on social media, many of them for free. So definitely worth a read. 373 pages, but disturbingly, you can probably read it in about 2 or 3 days. Okay, because I think you would pick up on the things that's interesting for you, and some chapters are longer, but specific to a specific type of media, etc. So, getting into the content, there's kind of 2 parts to the book. The first is around the guerrilla approach. What is guerrilla marketing? What is it today? Why do we need it? Some secrets. We'll go through all of that just now. How do you make a marketing plan? How do you get truly creative? The most lethal marketing methods, which I don't think was a good idea, but how do you save money? And then research. How do you do that? And then the book has kind of 3 core sections that deals with like how do you kind of utilize specific media to get your message out. And I think what really impressed me about these kind of 3 chapters is that they're long and decent, and having executed in my life marketing from kind of print and digital and new media and all of that stuff, what I loved here is the guidance that you get. It's like a real deep down dive. Like if you're going to do print marketing, remember to ask this to your agency and get this right, and make sure that you've got a border around it that's distinct, etc. So like a lot of wisdom that's been packaged into how to actually do it in specific media and what to look out for and how to get it done. Then an interesting little chapter around the being like a guerrilla company. What is a guerrilla company's attributes and attitudes, and what kind of marketing psychology do you need to embrace? And I thought that was quite good because, as you know, purpose-driven organizations and kind of the values and how organizations interact with their customers is actually a very important aspect. And it was, for me, nice to sit and say, this isn't just a book about how to kind of ramp up your sales, but to say that if your attributes and attitudes and read into that kind of your vision, mission, purpose, and values isn't aligned with your customers, then you're actually going to have a much harder time. So that was it. And then like an interesting little chapter around 200 weapons of guerrilla marketing, literally a list of 200 things that you could be doing, and where you should be thinking about is your brand there. So fun in that way. Cool. Okay. So what is guerrilla marketing? Okay. So I had maybe a different idea. I think my idea was that it's innovative advertising. And what I realized is, yes, it is about being memorable. And I think you could see, for example, that advert. It's like if you're in a car and you're driving through the mountain, you're definitely going to think twice before going in there. And you're going to remember it and you're going to tell somebody, and that's kind of the memorable marketing side of it. But it's also carrying through your message and making sure that every bit of contact your company has with anybody in the outside world communicates that message. And it says that this is who I am, and it is there. What I found interesting is that implies a lot of opportunity and not a lot of money. So our good friend Mr. Levinson is quite adamant to say that you don't have to break the budget in order to be clearly creative about your marketing, and we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Yeah, I think that's good news for the small businesses that you referred to, because when you are a startup in the beginning, you are cost sensitive, but you also want to get your message out there.
Absolutely. And in fact, he says when it comes to guerrilla marketing, it's actually better for you to be a small business, because when you're a large organization, you kind of paint by numbers. You've got your conversion rates, you know what's working, what's not, etc. And those companies aren't as agile. But on the converse, what he's also sitting saying, he's made a lot of money out of truckloads of books being sold to large companies because they want their people to be more creative and more customer directed, etc. So I think it's interesting from that perspective to say guerrilla marketing isn't just for small businesses; it is also for large businesses. And I think if you put it into an African context, most of our businesses are small businesses. We don't really have these massive, large businesses. So we need to think like this. And I appreciate that perspective. So marketing is the art of getting people to change their minds, okay, or to maintain their mindsets if they're already inclined to do business with you. Yeah. Sounds obvious, but how many ads have you seen that really changed your mind? It's like, okay, so interesting. And marketing is for prospective and current customers. It's not only to get leads in. And there's an interesting stat that we'll show a little bit later, which says that 68% of customers are lost after you've acquired them. So you've gone to all the money to find out that they're interested in you, and then because you didn't follow up, that messes you up. And that's the key idea here, is to say that the cornerstone of guerrilla marketing is customer follow-up. You should really follow up with your customers and make sure that they are engaged with you and that you understand why they're there and that they understand what you can do for them and that you keep in touch with them up to the point where they're happy and then even beyond that. So the customer lifecycle only starts with acquisition, and the objective of marketing is to kind of measure itself in profits rather than necessarily and the number of relationships that you are able to maintain, rather than just going from a perspective of saying, well, we want to get more leads. And I think that that's so relevant in the internet age, where it's easy to get leads, but it's not easy to build relationships. Cool. I also like a statement that he has in this section, which is marketing is the truth made fascinating. Okay.
Does that mean you must operate in the hyperbole?
Yeah, but I mean, like, you've seen the Axe ads, yeah?
Yeah.
Where there's a guy and people are chasing him, yeah? And I just thought that this was a brilliant execution of the Axe ad. And, you know, and it's like, so we all get it, but it just makes it fun. It's not hard to do. And it's just something that you do in a couple of basements in a town, and like people talk about it. They take photos of it and they send it on, you know? So, yeah, and it is the truth. You can't lie in advertising, and you shouldn't. And if you do, you will get caught, and it will damage your brand. But how do you make it interesting? You know, how do we take common everyday ideas and really make it so that your customer will have success because of what you're doing? Okay, so I mean, if you look at this ad, what makes it interesting is it's not just an exit sign. It's like you're being chased, and it goes into the drama of the moment, and it makes me want to be that person that's being chased, you know. You're trying to solve a problem for that customer, which is he's putting on strong deodorant spray because he wants to attract admirers, you know. So you must show them how they can achieve their goals, and it's not about you and what you're offering, it's about making your customer successful. Okay, so that might be a silly example, but that's really what we need to ask in all of our sales and marketing. What am I doing to help you become successful? Not what do I have to offer you? That's irrelevant. Okay. Yes, that's why we're having a conversation, and that seems to be what I should be putting forward to you. But I'm actually probably putting something in front of you that's either solving a problem, addressing a real need that you've had, or a latent desire, or an intent that you may or may not have expressed yet. Okay. And if I can tap into that, I'm marketing.
So that suggests a lot of empathy from your side doing the marketing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, I also think it is about being creative. So there's an example in the book of a first bookstore, covers his entrance, like massive 60% off, the guy next to him 40% off, going out of business, sale, etc., etc. And there's this guy in the middle. And so he now needs to figure out what he did. So he just put up 2 notices and said main entrance. So they spent all of this money, and he just sat there and said, come get it here. So, you know, that's when you are like aware of your situation. And I think a lot of the message of guerrilla marketing is to have the situational awareness, to really figure out what's going on, and to really be passionate about your product and where you are and what you're doing, so that you can put your best foot forward and really respond to the need of the environment. So I thought that was a very little example. And Mr. Levinson kindly takes us through kind of what's the difference between traditional marketing and maybe this is some of our attitudes towards marketing. I think we all get kind of born into a world, and if you go to university and you study marketing like I have for at least, I don't know, 14 years at some level, you get taught many things, but not necessarily how that translates. And we build up these misperceptions of what they are. Yeah. And when the rubber hits the road, marketing is about sales and getting customers in on the front door and making sure that they're happy. But we get taught these kind of misnomers, which it must cost money. Okay, and I think the biggest South African example of guerrilla marketing is the original Nando's ads, which I'm sure if you were around, that was a good reminder. The reason why those ads came to be is because Nando's had no budget. They had exactly 50,000 Rand to spend on their original marketing campaign. So they went to an agency and sat there and said, we have no money. What can we do with it? And a creative bunch of people sat down in terms of coming up with an ambush marketing strategy where they basically stole into other people's airtime. Okay, and we all loved it, and that pushed the Nando's brand, and they've adopted that as kind of part of their approach since then. And it's always been, it's kind of been defining for them. To say, so that whole massive exposure that they built with those initial campaigns was basically on a zero budget. And what Mr. Levinson says is that if you invest time, energy, imagination, and information into a process, you will get a marketing result. Okay, so realize that is the truth. Okay, traditional marketing puts it out as this mysterious and big and no mistakes approach, and everything has to be perfect. I love the marketers always say pixel perfect, like it cannot move an inch. And guerrilla marketing sits and says it's a process, okay, and you can control it because you are controlling your interaction with your customer. So you take people through that process. If you go ask an agency today, they'll say that your dream must equal your budget. Okay, so if you have a big dream, you need a big budget. Okay, I think the way that I like to think about it, and it's also in the book, is to sit and say, if you've got well, your dreams can be much bigger than the relationship with your budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's sell that dream. Let's get it in. Traditional marketing is kind of often single shot. Like if I put out an ad now, I want to know how many people responded to that. And if you change your mindset just a little bit in terms of saying, okay, so what is the lifetime value of this customer over time? Then I might actually look differently at the cost of acquisition of the customer. So I'm measuring the profit or the value of this customer over its whole lifetime, and what did it mean for me in terms of acquiring that customer. So it's a slightly different set of measurements. And I know from when you put out an ad, you want your money back immediately. Yeah. But if you put out an ad and you get one really big customer and it defines the rest of your future as a business, will you look at it exactly the same? So that's an interesting kind of just different perspective. Traditional marketers like myself is often very judgmental because I'm experienced. This is what happened last time we tried this, etc. And a guerrilla marketer is willing to go on human behavior and repetition, to sit and say, if you present the same idea to somebody long enough, and they see that consistently, that they will in time buy. Okay, so slightly different philosophies. And in fact, there's a section in the book which I didn't put in here where they give you the 25 what happens through the 1st to the 25th of repetition of you actually seeing an ad. And they basically come to the conclusion that you will only buy on the 25th repetition of the ad anyway. So just kind of start there.
Rian, is in the guerrilla marketing, is there a suggestion then that you have to, in the moment, think on your feet in that process? In other words, you can't just plan, plug in and play. You have to.
And it's about starting a conversation, Brooke. So that's really what the objective is. Okay, it's not to, and it's like your advertising brings a person to the point where they are wanting to have a conversation with you, and then the minute they interact with you, they're starting a conversation. And even if you can get the conversation into the ad, make it a two-way experience, and you're asking somebody to do something, that's when your ads start working really, really well. And you'll see some of the examples as we're going along. So the interesting thing is traditional marketing kind of said to us, like, take the products in your core business, market them well, and then over time diversify from the profits. While Guerrilla Marketing says, well, you must invest in growth and continue to invest in growth. And that will require you to rethink yourself all the time. And I've found that a very powerful thought, if you reflect on it, to say invest in growth and then continue to invest in growth, because that means that what you do today won't be adequate tomorrow if you want to go to the next level. Cool. Traditional marketing is about taking money from a customer. So what can I take from the customer? And guerrilla marketing is about what can I give a customer for free to solve their problem. Okay, and that might sound very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But that's how I'm having a conversation with you. I don't have to solve all of your problems, but the ones that you really have, yeah. So, and I think of it like, say problem is finance. What tools are you giving the student to finance their studies? If the problem is, you know, time to consume a product, yeah, what are you doing to make that an easier fit? Okay, and what tools are you giving to the person using information, other types of things to solve things that are related to their world? Yeah. Traditional marketing typically measures money, and guerrilla marketing measures relationships. And traditional marketing is about showing you their ad as many times as possible, while guerrilla marketing is getting you to opt into the conversation. And there's a whole section on how to do that. And even Mr. Levinson refers us to some books and things and stuff around how to use opt-in marketing as a mindset. Cool. Then also traditional marketing is about growing one customer at a time, while guerrilla marketing asks us, how can we enlarge the size of each transaction? How can we engage in more transactions per cycle with each customer? How can we tap into the referral power of each customer? And how can we grow with one customer at a time, but grow? Okay, so as long as you've got that customer, what can you do to make them happy, satisfied? Use their referrals that you get from them. Use the interest that they've got from you and the amazing experience that they got from you to really make it work. And just by way of an interesting kind of being where your customer is at, if you're in a pool, you're playing pool in a bar, and you need to decide what to drink next, make sure it's a Guinness, yeah? And I'm sure that would have cost them about, I don't know, £2 per execution. Yeah, but it's very clever and actually looks like a little Guinness. Okay, cool. As I said before, do not ignore the customers after the sale. As much as 68% of businesses is lost due to apathy after the sale. We've convinced you to buy it, and for marketing, that seems to be the end of the journey, because now we've brought the customer in and we've now given them to sales. And sales then sits there and says, well, okay, we've got this person, we'll get to them. And somewhere in there, I think the Afrikaans saying is van die hand na die mond val die pap op die grond, and the equivalent in English would be very hard to translate, but somewhere between where you start and where you end, you lose the customer. Cool. You know, just two examples of some fun advertising. Reminders for Shark Week. These were put on beaches, just lying around. And when the person,
it's a horrible reminder.
Yeah, but when the person picks it up, they see what it's about. It's like, oh, okay, cool. And then they gave out these towels so people could lie on them that says exposure causes cancer. I'm killing 20 people every day, you know. So it's yeah, just some guerrilla marketing. Solves the problem. Another idea which I've found quite interesting is fusion marketing. How can you operate with your competitors or even related products in fusion marketing. So how can you combine products and services to create a powerful all-round experience and lower the cost of shared marketing? So having a burger and a beer, kind of a natural connection. And also this one was nice. There's an ice cream, and inside there's a Colgate. Don't forget to brush. And it's just a stick, and it's not something that you expect, but it's in the age of responsible and renewable marketing, that's a nice way to do it. See, even our advertising was useful for you. Yeah. And like McDonald's showing Coke while you're going to a Disney movie, and it's about the customer's whole experience. And I think that that's something that we should challenge ourselves as businesses to look at, to say, what are we doing to make sure that we've got a powerful network of suppliers and dependent businesses within our world so that we give the customer the best experience, even though we might not be best at it. Or we sit there and say, oh, we're giving away margin, rather have a better experience, because that's what it's about. And then you also build a codependency with your partner so that you get to a point where it actually makes sense. So I really like the idea of fusion marketing that's also explained in the book, and not something that we often think about.
But it can be very powerful.
Massively, yeah. And also you're co-opting brands into kind of your wheelhouse so that the customer sees, oh, okay, but like, wow, you're American Brew House, okay. Didn't know about you, but you're using Budweiser, so you're partnering with a credible brand. And co-opting brands is a very powerful way to build a brand ecosystem that could be quite powerful for a customer. Cool. I'd like this one to say, do you have a logo or do you have a meme? So if you showed me this in 2016, I wouldn't have bought it. But we all know this story. I want to build a wall around the entire world, and do you know who's going to pay for it? Like aliens. So, and I think for everything that you can say about Donald Trump, he's a brilliant marketer, okay, because he really understands the power of creating a memorable message, although nobody actually takes it probably that seriously, but he has positioned himself carefully in a way that allows him to be talked about in places that he would never get to. Okay. And which one are you more likely to remember? And that's also one of the challenges in the book, to sit and say, like, we spend so much time on building logos, but do we really spend time on communicating our message? And that's just a lovely little meme that I also picked up. This is avocado, that moment when you find the perfect avocado in the supermarket, and it's this lady, and she just looks so lovingly at the thing. It's like you just sit there and say, wow, that will actually make me look at buying an avocado, so like it's clever marketing. And how difficult is that to execute? I mean, it's one color print and a stand.
Yeah, but it's only the people that have watched Game of Thrones that will know that is Khaleesi, and they would be afraid that there's a dragon that will come out of that egg that she's holding.
Cool. Okay, so maybe I didn't know that. That's why it's fun for me. But so even then, I mean, there's a backstory. It's like, and what you're going to go tell your other Game of Thrones friends, yeah,
yes,
it's exactly that.
Yep.
So that's how you create a kind of knock-on or viral effect, or something that people are willing to talk about.
It makes up for conversation.
Exactly. It's all about marketing combinations. And I think that this is also a powerful message, and something that we all know is intuitively true, but it's becoming an art and a science in itself, to say it's not about just choosing one way to do this. Like, this is one guy I met one year, quite a while ago, and he was selling cameras. So I asked him, so what's your secret to success in terms of marketing? And he says, for the last, I think at that point in time, it was 40 years, there's a newspaper in which he took half a page every single week. Okay. And he says, that's all that I've ever done for marketing. Okay. And he showed it to me. He showed And that's what he done. That's how he sold his cameras for 40 years. Okay. And that's the thing that worked for him. He had a perfect recipe on how to put that ad in, all of the stuff, and he didn't vary his message. I think what we are seeing is that we need to meet the customer where they're at. They don't consume media in the same way anymore. So what are you doing to use every single element that you've got to create awareness? How do you support evaluation? How do you support the purchase decision? How do you get people to use your stuff? How do you make it repurchase or on-selling? And how do you turn your customers into advocates? And this is a fairly common way to start thinking about marketing in this kind of digital age. And there's amazing platforms and tools and etc. that really support that. And the message here is no single media will be sufficient to attract and retain your customer. So don't think it is. Okay, and look at how all of this is a concert that comes together, and doesn't matter if I first met you on an SMS or through a website or through a blog, I end up with in the same funnel at some level. Cool. Marketing is about being a holistic customer experience as well. And traditional marketing, for the most part, is unintentional. You go on radio, TV, newspaper, etc., and they talk at you, okay? And guerrilla marketing is always intentional. It's all, to your earlier point, is to say, how do you pay close attention to all the details of the contact with a specific customer, ignoring nothing and realizing the stunning importance of those tiny but supercharged details. And that's a direct quote from the book.
So I was wondering, reading this, Rian, whether that word unintentional was the right word in his environment. Well, I'm thinking traditional marketing is maybe too broad in its intention, and that guerrilla marketing is very specific in its intention.
Absolutely. So it's kind of like the shotgun versus the sniper, yeah? Okay, and that's kind of what's happening here, is to say, when you're on a radio ad, I don't really care if you're interested in it right now, okay? But if I could, for example, one thing that a couple of years ago we did is we sent out an individualized PowerPoint that's was voice overed by a machine at the time, okay, this was about 6 years ago, and sat there and said, dear Rian, I've realized that you've just signed up for this massive thing that you've purchased in your life, and this is how we would love to support you. And you get this thing, and it's like, wow, okay, they actually took the time to do this for me. That's what intentionality means here. Okay, to sit and say, like, making a connection, doing the small things that really make a difference. Moving from the kind of traditional marketing as a monologue to a conversation where we dialogue. Okay, and I'm opening the dialogue with you, and we are after that point interactive. Okay, so if whatever you're doing, even if it's massified, actually communicates back to me, and it is the start of a conversation. So the call to action for guerrilla marketing is the interaction, which I find a bit challenging as an idea, because, what if? But what if? Okay. So an example was a DVD that was a silly example, but I thought it's quite powerful to say. This lady was marketing camps that she was doing. She would give out a DVD that shows you about the experience, and only invites you to a consultation to discuss. Okay, 80% of people converted on the discussion. So like it almost becomes the type of filter to find out the type of people that you are there for. And it didn't try to sell that to you in that medium. So this brings us to our second chapter, which is why guerrilla marketing. Now, the one here on the left, be born again. It's a plastic surgeon. and there you're pressing the button thinking like, huh, and it makes you look. Okay. And like, why not try on one of our watches? And I mean, that would have cost you exactly, I don't know, like 20 rand execution, and securing it at the opportunity at an airport to do so. I mean, I don't think that watch promotion, if you get it right, could have cost you more than 20,000 rand, depending on size, scope, and scale. And it communicates a message. It's like, try it. It looks good on you, like that. I would have had every second one to sort of say, this is looking good on you. Want one? Buy it at the local shop. And that's the kind of stuff where you like really meeting your customer where they're at, having fun, being noticed, and making people think twice.
But it also signals innovation and creativity.
Yeah, and isn't that a fun brand characteristic? Isn't that what people want from brands? And marketing as an entrepreneur, some of the advice given is you must have a budget and a capital allocation for your marketing. You must plan to market. Understand where you need to go. Look at opportunities that you can seize that will pull you into a common direction. You may not be able to do all the things that you plan to do for marketing, but at least everything that you do should be consistent with where you're going. Okay. Ask yourself really, what problem do you want to solve for your customer, and how can you communicate that effectively? And I give an example of a guy that says, I wish to teach people to operate computers. And after some thinking through it, he started a company called Computers for Beginners. And so from the very beginning, it communicates the message very cleverly. And I mean, so this was just a nice ad for watchers, which I thought was so creative. I mean, literally, this is easy to and quick to print. And as you take one of the options, it tears off. And as we are doing it together, we're getting rid of the pounds. And everybody that takes one of those things sees that they're contributing to the experience. And I mean, what a powerful, neat, like on brand, on message kind of execution that says innovation is cheap. And this is something that you put up at your local
grocery
store. Yeah. And like you're speaking to your target market, you're speaking to the community, and it's really making an impact. Yeah. So that's having a conversation in a nice way. Cool. This ad is for the Swiss skydive elevator, and this was a sticker that they put on some vinyl floors, like in banks and places like that. And then like you getting the sense of this experience, this 3D sticker, and you're just thinking like, wow, what if I was there, like, so just connecting with a message or what you're trying to say. So, but the kind of getting back to the plot is to say that we really need to ask ourselves, what's the lifetime value of the customer? What am I doing to increase the lifetime value of the customer? Am I constantly reacquiring customers onto my database, or have they met me before and I've ignored them and I keep on marketing to them in a way that's impersonal? And I think that I did a bunch of work for one of the major retailers a couple of years ago. And it's interesting because they believed in non-prime time advertising. So they would sell these products when nobody was really watching. So if you're tired in the middle of the night, switch on the TV, one of the ads are running. Okay, I will not name names. And they got people into stores because people wanted their products. Okay, and we did just a test of how many people they've reacquired over time. Yeah, and more than 60% of their customers they reacquired constantly through the advertising. So we just started databasing the interest on the front point of sale and marketing against that database. And they radically reduced their spend on advertising with even higher results, because those customers tend to need to want to and is in the profile of buying their products from that point onwards. So, you know, that's something that I'm quite passionate about, to say like, what's the constant cost of reacquiring your customer, and can you minimize that? You need to assure them, but that's a different message in the second instance. Cool. Warning signals that your marketing is ineffective. If your sales is mostly driven by price and not the impression of your product, then you know that you are doing bad marketing. If your customers cannot distinguish your products or your services from your competitors, if you use disconnected sales gimmicks to get people to buy and stay, so early discounts, conversion, promotions, all sorts of like, oh, I need to just offer you 5 cents off at the right time, otherwise you won't buy, etc. And it's gimmicky. Then you know that you're communicating the wrong message. If you do not have a unified message to impart to your customers and to the trade, then that's usually not a good sign. If most of your sales leads come from your sales staff and not through your marketing initiatives, that's also usually kind of a good indication that your marketing's not working. And then if your long-time customers or staff says, I didn't know you offered that, then your product is obviously not well known. And if you do not have a customer or prospect database, then you do know that that's an issue. I just thought this was a very interesting way as well to market. This was a resort, and they took the counters at where you take your baggage off at the airport, and they created this sense of movement. To say, come join us at our particular resort and casino. Natural target market, because it is people that are traveling, looking for fun, etc. And they're seeing something different. So they made these interactive displays that changed over time. So fun, interesting.
Very intentional.
Very intentional. And it's having a conversation with you. It's like, oh, are you just traveling again? Shouldn't you take a break? You know?
Yeah.
And you, as you're taking off your luggage, you're thinking, wow, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, cool. So interesting thing here is to say that needs have evolved. And I thought this was a fascinating insight to say, you know, in the 80s, it was all about quality. In the 90s, it was all about flexibility. In 2000s, innovation. Doesn't mean that these things aren't still important. Okay. And this book was written somewhere in the mid 2010s. And I kind of just projected forward in terms of saying, like, when I look at the 2010s, a lot of things was around, are you making it sustainable? And what I see now in advertising is, are you changing the world? Are you somehow, like, there's a younger generation that wants to see responsible products that are world changing, that I feel that I'm part of something bigger. And, you know, so really, people's needs are evolving in terms of advertising. So we need to be clear around that, to sit and say, you know, whatever you're doing right now, whether it is buying a Coke, you're actually contributing to the environment, or if you are putting gas into your car, that this company is becoming carbon neutral within the next 10 years, because that's driving buying behavior right now. I thought this was also a nice ad, which is, what does it take to get this photo? This was a National Geographic campaign to say, stand here with a camera for 3 years. That's how we got this photo, you know. So that's kind of a very clear message on how things get to be where they are and why you should support them. Okay. So before we start, to make this easier, you'll see that every one of the 16 rules of marketing ends with an end. Okay. Okay. So commitment, investment, consistent, confident, patient, assortment, subsequent, convenient, amazement, measurement, involvement, dependent, armament, consent, content, and augment. Okay. So that was an interesting thing that I realized when they mentioned in the text after having read it. I was looking like, what puts this list together, you know? And it's like, oh, they all end with end. Okay, so you must commit to your marketing program. You must invest. You must be consistent. You are there to provide confidence in your firm. You must be patient in order to keep your commitment. Okay, you must see marketing as an assortment of different things. There isn't just one thing. You know that profits come after you've marketed, so it's subsequent to the sale. It must be convenient. You must put an element of amazement in your marketing, something that people can talk about or relate to, or just that little feeling. And I think this kind of beer ad does it as well, just to sit and say like, oh, well, gee whiz, they really thought about, that's, wow, that's neat. You know, it's neat. Yeah. And it's action orientated. You're participating with the commercial. Like you're opening up and it's like you already have a beer in your hand, so just come in and have another one. You know. Use measurement to judge the effectiveness. Prove your involvement with your customer and prospect by a regular follow-up with them. Learn to be dependent on other businesses and they on you. So I thought that was kind of the fusion marketing idea. You must be skilled in the armament, which means really understand technology and how that translates into being cost effective. Use marketing to gain consent from your customers and broaden that consent to the point of sale. And I thought that was a brilliant statement. Like the minute you tell me that we can have a conversation, the only rest of my task is to broaden that conversation up to the point where we've agreed on what that is. And then I think that's a good negotiating style as well. Sell the content or the substance of your offering rather than the style. After your marketing program is full-fledged, augmented rather than just rest on your laurels. So nice, neat little 16 points. Okay. Brilliant little campaign. So these vending machines were put out with dirty water, and you could select between malaria, cholera, typhoid, dengue, hepatitis, dysentery, salmonella, etc. And it's like, if you're thirsty, well, there's a couple of million people in the world that just give us $1 and we'll make sure that they aren't, you know, like, okay, next level weird, but very powerful. And they raise a lot of money that way, you know, so I thought that was
that's brilliant. Yeah.
Brilliant, yeah. Just one of the things that I wanted to pick up on, because in the book, each one of these have like a little section, which is brilliant and there's a lot in it. But just one that I wanted to pick up on is commitment. So interestingly enough, Coca-Cola has 48.6% share of all soft drinks on Earth, and that's a $341 billion market. Okay, they've had the same logo and image since 1886, and they sell 1.7 billion servings of Coke and related products every day. Okay, so that's commitment to a brand. And it's like, when you look at it like that, you just sit there and say, like, we don't realize what it takes to build a big brand over time. The Marlboro Man, Marlboro, they've stuck to the same image and messaging to eventually sell 1 in every 5 cigarettes on Earth. Okay, is a Marlboro, and they've been doing that for 30 years, and they didn't change their message at all. Nothing, like zero.
And to claim 20% of that market is quite a feat.
Yes, exactly. Hermes, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Prada. I mean, those are brands that we see today, and it's hip and happening. And like, those aren't the prices of a handbag. That's when they started.
That's not even a deposit.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and so I think the message there is, the minute you start selling a product to a customer is when you're starting to create a brand. A brand isn't something that you do through advertising. A brand is literally in everything that you do and how you communicate that through. Duracell on energy, just two interesting campaigns, like just a street light and a bus light. Sit and say, we're everywhere, we're making light in the world. It's sort of cute. Okay. Okay, this next section, the Guerrilla Marketing Plan. I know we've got 10 minutes and I'm going to try to keep it brief. But how do you build a guerrilla marketing plan? So that this is a little bag that they put these burn 60 in, which if you close it, then all of a sudden you look slim. You know, that's a very clever way to do things, and it's just a simple packaging that really differentiates you and communicates your message and does it. Okay. So laying the basis for a guerrilla marketing plan, the most important element of what you do is how you position your product. And there's a lot in the book around that. So, and also why that's important. To position yourself, you really need to understand what business are you in, what is your goal, what benefits do you offer, what is the real competitive advantages, and what makes you afraid. You know, what do you fear in terms of putting your market into, or your product into the market, and then as well. Really interrogating your target market, who uses your product the most. By marketing to them, you'll get your largest return. So there was a coffee shop example in the book where they realized that they weren't doing so well. So they started looking at exactly who uses their products and what's being copied. And they did a bit of a survey, and they figured out that the legal secretaries in town tend to use them because they needed to get stuff done fast, and it was kind of like an outsource function. So they just started marketing to legal secretaries, okay? And they had a 30% increase in sales. So by really understanding who's using your product and for what, you can really do that, you know? And I also thought this is nice. You know, you want to show adventure and interesting things. That's the best way to market the zoo. And this is just some 3D printing. Plus, advertising is notoriously cheap. And the interesting thing about it, you usually get it for longer than you anticipate, because the bus companies are slow to have it removed until they find a new person to replace it. They tend not to do that replacement. And what an interesting way to promote the zoo. And your kids can see it when they're driving around, etc. So an interesting and fun idea. Very important thing is you must realize that if you don't have a strategy to sell to women, you're not in marketing, because women control more than 60% of all wealth and influence in most markets. Women have a say over more than 75% of what households spend. Women account for more than 50% of internet use. And if you don't understand what you're doing to position your product to women, which the book's premise is that women want service and a relationship with the company and a kind of trust relationship. And I think that's a great way to start thinking about how do you sell. It's like, how do I sell this to somebody that wants a relationship with me? Okay, and that's a mindset, and it's not being misogynistic or like unwoke or gender bias, etc. But in marketing, we have to realize that that's where the real money is. Okay, you know, so how do we get the best out of our strategy? Women buy products on is the myth, and the reality is women buy on customer service. Okay. The myth is that products are finite and self-contained, and in reality, all communication needs to be two ways. The myth is that women like to shop. 60% of women feel that shopping is a negative experience, that they're being targeted, and that they're not getting what they want. So how do you turn that around? One of the myths is that you can judge an ad by how many people respond to a single exposure. But you must actually look at the ad, must be judged on how many people see it as building a long-term relationship with you. And myth is that corporate policies are unimportant, and customers really, the truth is that customers really want to know the company values, and it's not separate from any marketing activities. And if you've been in customer service for a long time, you'll find that to sit and say the customer will judge you on what you state is your values, in terms of saying, but you state this is your values, but this is what you do, like you ignoring me, but you say the customer is king, you know, so which one is it? And that's the kind of stuff which ultimately determines your interaction. Any business that views service as a department kind of missing the point, because service is in every interaction with the customer and has the ultimate marketing function. And another myth is that women are not entrepreneurial. And the reality is that women start companies at twice the rate of men and employ more people than most large companies. So if you're a woman entrepreneur out there, shout out to you, and realize that you already have an advantage over your male counterparts in that you know more about the people that actually make these buying decisions. Cool. I'm just conscious of time. There's some really nice guerrilla marketing strategies, how to define them. Some good examples. A really nice section of the book is how to develop truly creative marketing. And I thought, if you remember this movie with Tom Hanks, with where he's like on the island and the FedEx, etc. You know, that for me is like a truly creative marketing, because you find the inherent drama, you translate that drama into a meaningful benefit, you state it in a believable way, you get people's attention, you motivate your ad to get involved, you communicate clearly. 100% of the audience must understand your main point, and you must measure your finished creative against your creative strategy. And I thought that particular movie was like one big ad for FedEx, because they delivered the product at the end of the day. Their guy was there and, you know, made sure that it was all done. And to this day, they sell Wilson balls with a hand on them as a product that is out there in the world. You know, so that's truly creative marketing. It's an hour and a half FedEx ad, and they just had to buy into the concept. Different marketing methods, reach your audience where they consume the media, make it interesting for them to understand that. Remember that people have a maximum concentration span of 20 minutes, and a 1 minute can deliver the same message. You know, so what are you doing to put that 1 minute message in the right place? There's many ways to save money. Be clear on what you're paying for, determine if there's a cost-effective and freelance ways that you can get this done. Many things that you can get charged for a lot, you can do fairly cheaply, and freelancing is a way to do that. So just be mindful of that as an entrepreneur. Get a logo design. It doesn't need to cost you more than 300 Rand. You can do it on Fiverr, and get a logo designer, a freelance logo designer somewhere in the world to design your logo. If you go and spend 100,000 Rand for a logo, then make sure that you're getting a value for that. Okay, this is a bit disturbing campaign, but an interesting one nonetheless. Just printing on tomato sachets, and it's on landmines, so it gets this like really vivid message across and like leaves an impression. Yeah, interesting. Research is obviously the basis of a good marketing strategy. How do you do that research? Who's the end customer? What are you doing with them? How do you motivate them to buy? How do they decide to buy your product? We talk a lot about this in our marketing course. We do some examples of that and really design it with you. Demographics, psychographics, media, related products, and what do people do with your product? And I find that that's one of the most interesting things, is after they bought your product, what do they do with it? They just go throw it down. And how can you then have a conversation with them from that point onwards and support them beyond that point? And some of the most amazing creative and innovation stuff that I've seen has come out of this question. Cool. As I mentioned, there's like a lot on media, different media. We don't have time for that now. And a lot on the guerrilla company, like attributes and attitudes. Some of the attitudes, just quickly, you need to have passion, generosity, speed, neatness, good contact, telephone demeanor, value, easy to do business with, and flexibility, which is natural for us all, and we understand that. The 200 weapons, it's just items that you can think about where you can deliver your company and its message. Just our brief commercial interlude here. to say our courses deals with digital marketing. We have a course on that, so that's interesting. If you're interested in this, this would be feeding into that. We've got some short programs in innovation and creativity that also talks about how to think about staff creativity. We obviously have executive education programs that we design with you to deliver these types of message. Look out for our advanced diploma in project management, which has just started. So we really, and if you want to study VCom marketing, do that through our partner Edgevas. So we're already practicing some fusion marketing here, one of our subsidiaries, and contact us on SGI or via email if you need to get in touch with us. So yeah, Frick, that's kind of the long and short of it. That's the time that we've got, and yeah, I think really the book creates an opportunity for you to think about these things, but it is for you to go and sit and think about it and come up with your plan.
Yeah, I really like this content, and I mean, although this has been written some time ago, I really think it resonates with our environment and where we are at the moment, and especially in the way that we are also doing the marketing on our side at SGI and Edgevos. It really resonates with the different audiences out there. No, I really like the book, but you've gone through some of these slides so fast. The people will really need to go and buy the book and read the detail.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, cool. But thank you to our audience for being here today. If you want to continue the conversation, get in touch with us, and we can figure out how we can make more of that. So nice having you here, and the recordings will be available afterwards. And if you need anything, just shout. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Keep well.
Okay. Thank you.